The last Wagner warrior collapsed in a puddle of his own blood and entrails, as Douglas Kennedy's railgun blast tore clean through him, marking the definitive end to the brutal war mere days after Earth joined the fight against the cruel Wagner Empire. A week earlier, a desperate plea for aid from the beleaguered Galactic Alliance reached skeptical human ears. For decades, the Wagner had waged a vicious war of conquest, bombing civilian worlds into oblivion, enslaving entire species, and crushing any resistance with overwhelming numbers and firepower. The Alliance stood on the precipice of total defeat. On Earth, having only recently developed faster-than-light travel, a fierce debate raged over intervention in this interstellar war. Douglas Kennedy, a grizzled military strategist and veteran of Earth's own bloody conflicts, argued passionately that the Wagner would inevitably threaten humanity if left unchecked. His forceful testimony finally convinced Earth's leaders to send a battle group armed with advanced human warships and weaponry to turn the tide. What greeted Douglas and his forces upon arrival shocked even the battle-hardened general. Entire planets lay in ruins, once vibrant cities reduced to rubble, the void of space littered with the shattered hulks of Alliance warships. Evidence of Wagner atrocities and cruelty abounded. His jaw set with steely determination, Douglas threw his fleet into the fray. In their first engagement, the human ships unleashed swarms of AI drones, storms of precision railgun fire, and salvos of tactical nukes, decimating a Wagner armada that outgunned them 10-1. The Alliance species watched in stunned disbelief as this upstart race did what they had failed to do for a generation. Fornax, the ruthless Wagner Supreme Commander, seethed with rage at reports of the smug primitives laying waste to his forces with their infernal technology. Realizing the existential threat humanity posed, he amassed his empire's full might. Every dreadnought and battlecruiser, millions of bloodthirsty cloned warriors for an all-out blitz to wipe out the human reinforcements before they could fully deploy. He would drown the humans in Wagner blood and grind them to dust beneath his iron heel. As Douglas and Fornax set their fleets on a collision course, one driven by honor and duty, the other by wounded pride and cruel arrogance, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Alliance races could only watch and pray that these mysterious newcomers could prevail against a nigh unstoppable nemesis, hell-bent on galactic domination. The stage was set for a reckoning that would echo across the stars for eons to come. Let the battle be joined. As the Wagner armada loomed ominously on the sensors, Douglas Kennedy clenched his fists. His mind raced, calculations and scenarios playing out in rapid fire. There was no room for error. "All ships, execute Maneuver Delta 5, Douglas barked into the comm. "I repeat, Maneuver Delta 5, let's spring the trap." The human fleet peeled away in a seemingly chaotic retreat, luring the Wagners in like moths to a flame. Supreme Commander Fornax's mocking laughter echoed over the comms. "Run, little humans," Fornax sneered. "Run straight to your doom." But even as the Wagner ships surged forward in pursuit, invisible daggers slid into position at their flanks. The stealth frigates, pride of human ingenuity, decloaked on Douglas's signal, their precise vectors locked in. In a blinding flurry, the frigates unleashed their devastating payload. Relativistic kinetic rounds and wave after wave of missiles slammed into the Wagner ships, shredding hulls and spilling atmosphere. The carefully coordinated strikes crippled command vessels and sowed pandemonium through the enemy ranks. "Now," Douglas roared. "All ships hard about. Engage at will." The human fleet wheeled as one, charging headlong into the disarrayed Wagners. Sleek human craft danced nimbly among the enemy, pouring fire into the gaps torn by the stealth frigate assault. Wagner ships buckled and broke under the onslaught. Boarding shuttles speared into the wounded vessels, disgorging squads of augmented human marines. Vicious close-quarters battles erupted through the corridors as the boarders ripped into critical systems and data cores. On the bridge of his dreadnought, Fornax seethed, his eyes wild with rage at this impertinence. "Launch all assault wings," he screamed. Tear them apart. Rip the flesh from their bones. Wagner assault ships boiled out from the dreadnought, descending upon the human capital ships like a swarm of locusts. Gene-forged shock troops smashed into the human defenders, turning the sterile halls into charnel houses of savage melee. Amidst the frenzied carnage, Douglas led his hand-picked strike team in a dangerous gambit. Their pinnace knifed through the maelstrom of battle, weaving past sheets of flak to clamp onto the Wagner dreadnought's hull. Plasma torches flared, cutting through the reinforced plates. Douglas was first through the breach, his railgun barking in staccato fury. Wagner guards fell in sprays of blood and ruptured chitin as the strike team blasted onto the bridge. And there, amid the smoke and ruin, stood Fornax himself. The Supreme Commander lunged at Douglas with a screech, mono-edged blade in hand. Douglas met him head-on, a titan of human fury against a behemoth of cruel malice. The duel was brutal and short. Douglas's aim was true, and Fornax crumpled, his blade clattering to the deck. But even as the life faded from his eyes, the Wagner commander laughed, black blood bubbling from his lips. "You think you've won, human?" Fornax rasped. "This is only the beginning. The true invasion comes, and you cannot hope to stand against it." Douglas put a final railgun round through Fornax's skull before the weight of those words could sink in. The Wagner fleet was already breaking, fleeing before the human onslaught. But as the adrenaline faded and the toll of the battle became clear, Douglas felt a chill run through him. The casualties, on both sides, had been immense. And if Fornax was right, if this was mere prelude to the real invasion. He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. They had won a great victory today. The Galactic Alliance would live to fight another day. But even as the cheers of his crewmates filled the comms, Douglas was already looking to the dark horizons ahead. There was work to be done and time was running out. Douglas Kennedy stood before the holographic display, his brow furrowed as he studied the intel reports streaming in. The Wagner were amassing a fleet in the outer territories, one that dwarfed anything they'd faced before. Fornax's dying words echoed in his mind. The true invasion comes. "We can't let them finish building that armada," Douglas said, addressing the assembled war council. "We need to hit them where it hurts, their shipyards." The plan was insane, but it was their only shot. A small team of human commandos and Alliance special forces would infiltrate the heavily fortified Wagner shipyards. Their mission: to plant devastating computer viruses that would cripple the enemy's production capabilities. Under the cover of darkness, the strike team's stealth shuttle glided silently through space. State-of-the-art cloaking tech rendered them invisible to Wagner sensors. As they approached the massive shipyard complex, tension filled the air. 60 seconds to insertion, the pilot's voice crackled over the comm. The commandos double-checked their gear one last time. Each carried a data spike loaded with the specialized virus. With practiced precision, they breached the outer hull and slipped inside. Moving swiftly through shadowy corridors, they located key network access points. One by one, they inserted the virus-laden spikes. Alarms suddenly blared. "We've been made!" shouted Sergeant Rodriguez. "Fall back to extraction point." Chaos erupted as the viruses took hold. Security systems failed. Blast doors slammed shut at random. In the fabrication bays, robotic arms went haywire, smashing delicate components. The team fought their way back, trading fire with Wagner security forces. A massive explosion rocked the complex as volatile fuel stores ignited. "Move, move, move!" Douglas barked over the comm from the extraction shuttle. The surviving commandos dove through the airlock moments before Wagner reinforcements swarmed in. As they rocketed away from the devastated shipyards, Douglas allowed himself a grim smile. The bold gambit had worked. Back at Alliance HQ, Douglas pored over the intelligence gathered during the raid. There had to be a way to press their advantage. "Sir," an aide rushed in, "the War Council has approved your proposal for a preemptive strike." Within hours, human and allied fleets were assembled for a lightning assault on Wagner staging areas. Employing hit-and-run tactics, they caught the enemy completely flat-footed. Alliance fighters screamed out of hyperspace, unleashing precision strikes on fuel depots and munition stockpiles. Repair facilities erupted in flames. Wagner reinforcements found themselves ambushed before they could even reach the front lines. As reports flooded in detailing the staggering damage inflicted, Douglas felt a glimmer of hope. The Wagner invasion had stalled before it could truly begin, but he knew the enemy wouldn't take this lying down. The real test was yet to come. The stench of death hung heavy in the air as Douglas Kennedy surveyed the devastation on Proxima Colony. Bodies lined the streets, their skin mottled with grotesque lesions. The Xenocost virus had worked with horrifying efficiency. "Sir, we've got more refugee ships inbound," his aide reported. Douglas clenched his fists. "Quarantine protocols in effect, no exceptions." He watched as defense platforms locked onto the incoming vessels. A necessary precaution, but it tore at him. How many innocent lives would they be forced to sacrifice? Back on the command ship, Douglas pored over reports flooding in from other infected worlds. Billions dead already, with more falling by the hour. The Wagner had crossed a line from which there was no return. "This ends now," Douglas growled. He keyed the comm. "All units, this is General Kennedy. The enemy has unleashed a weapon of unparalleled evil upon civilian populations. We will answer this atrocity with the full might of humanity. Prepare for total war." Cheers erupted across the channel, but Douglas took no joy in it. He'd seen too much death already. There would be more before this was over. Days later, Douglas stood before a holographic display of a swirling nebula. Intelligence had pinpointed the source of the Xenocost within its roiling depths. "That's our target," he told the assembled strike team. "A Wagner bioweapons facility. We go in, we find out everything we can about this virus, and we shut it down. Permanently." The team's stealth ship plunged into the nebula's chaotic interior. Spatial distortions buffeted the hull as they navigated the treacherous currents. "Contact," the sensor officer called out. "Large structure dead ahead." The facility loomed before them, a sprawling complex disguised as an asteroid. Douglas gave the order, and the assault began. Breaching pods slammed into the outer hull. Marines poured out, engaging the Wagner defenders in vicious close-quarters combat. Douglas led from the front, his railgun spitting hypervelocity rounds. They fought their way to the central lab, leaving a trail of Wagner corpses in their wake. As the last defender fell, Douglas's team spread out to secure the area and access the facility's databanks. "Sir," a technician called out, "I've got something. It looks like—" A piercing alarm cut him off. Red warning lights bathed the chamber. "Reactor meltdown initiated," an emotionless voice announced. "Detonation in 5 minutes." "Fornax, you bastard," Douglas snarled. He keyed his comm. "Everyone back to the ship. Move!" They sprinted through blood-slicked corridors as the countdown ticked away. The technician clutched a data core to his chest, downloaded information, their only prize. 4 minutes. 3. They piled into the stealth ship as the facility began to shake itself apart. 2. 1. The engines flared to life. 0. A blinding flash erupted behind them as they rocketed clear of the nebula. The shockwaves slammed into their hull, alarms blaring. "Hull breach on Deck 3, the pilot shouted. "FTL drive damaged." "Can we jump?" Douglas demanded. "Maybe, one shot at this." Douglas nodded grimly. "Do it." Space twisted around them as they made the desperate leap. For a heart-stopping moment, Douglas thought they wouldn't make it. Then reality snapped back into focus, and he sagged with relief. They'd escaped by the skin of their teeth, but they'd done it. Now to see what secrets that stolen data held. Douglas stared at the holographic display, his eyes burning from hours of analysis. The data core recovered from the Wagner facility scrolled endlessly, its secrets laid bare. "Sir, you need to see this," Dr. Eliza Chen said, her voice tight with tension. Douglas leaned in, scanning the genetic sequences she highlighted. His blood ran cold as recognition dawned. "It can't be," he whispered. "I'm afraid it is," Chen confirmed. The Xenocost virus. It's based on the Marburg Ebola hybrid that nearly wiped out Africa in the 2030s. Douglas banged his head on the console. Those bastards took our own research and weaponized it. He paced the lab, mind racing. Suddenly he stopped. Doctor, can we reverse engineer this? Create a strain that targets Wagner biology? Chen's eyes widened. It's possible, but... Do it, Douglas ordered. We fight fire with fire. Days blurred into weeks as human scientists worked feverishly. Douglas watched as Chen injected the new virus into Wagner tissue samples. The cells writhed and burst under a microscope. It works, Chen breathed. Douglas nodded grimly. Prep for deployment. Stealth shuttles slipped through Wagner defenses, their holds laden with viral canisters. Human operatives moved like ghosts through alien cities, releasing the engineered plague into water supplies and air filtration systems. Within days, reports flooded in. Wagner colonies were falling into chaos as the virus ravaged their populations. Douglas watched drone footage of once bustling alien metropolises turned to wastelands, streets littered with contorted Wagner bodies. The Wagner fleet is in disarray, Admiral Zhao reported. They're pulling ships back to defend their core worlds. Douglas saw his chance. All units, this is General Kennedy. The enemy is vulnerable. We strike now, hard and fast, for Earth. Human battle groups surged forward, catching the fractured Wagner forces off guard. Plasma lances seared through alien hulls as fighters swarmed in lethal dogfights. Douglas stood on his flagship's bridge, directing the onslaught as humanity reclaimed world after world. The final push came above the Wagner homeworld. Douglas's dreadnought shuddered as it traded broadsides with the last remnants of the alien armada. A Wagner cruiser exploded in a spectacular fireball, debris pelting their shields. Boarding parties away, Lieutenant Rodriguez called out. Douglas led the charge onto the Wagner command ship, his railgun spitting hypervelocity rounds. Alien defenders fell before the human onslaught. They fought through twisting corridors until they reached the central chamber. There, amid blinking consoles and swirling holograms, stood the Wagner Overlord. The alien ruler's eye stalks swiveled towards Douglas, mandibles clicking in resignation. You have won, human, the Overlord's translator crackled. We surrender. Douglas lowered his weapon, his voice cold. Call off your forces, all of them. As the ceasefire took hold, Douglas stared out at the ravaged Wagner worlds below. The aftermath of war stretched as far as the eye could see, shattered cities, mass graves, and quarantine zones marking the Xenocost's grim harvest. He turned to Chen, who stood nearby. How long until we have a cure? Months, at least, she replied. Maybe years. Douglas nodded, watching as transport ships began ferrying surviving Wagner to internment facilities. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. As he prepared to address the victorious human forces, an aide rushed up with a data pad. Sir, our long-range probes. You need to see this. Douglas's eyes widened as he scanned the report. There, at the edge of known space, something vast and terrifying lurked. Something that made the Wagner conflict seem like a mere skirmish. He looked up at the stars, a chill running down his spine. Humanity had won the day, but at what cost? And what fresh horrors awaited them in the cosmic dark?
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.